What would you do if a judge tried to silence you for carrying a Bible? Would you back down, or would you stand your ground? For attorney Pam Bondi, the choice was clear, but what happened next shocked everyone. In a courtroom battle that became a national sensation, one woman's courage exposed the dangers of unchecked power and sparked a fight for justice that would change everything. This is the story of how a simple act of faith turned into a landmark legal showdown, and why it matters to all of us. Stay tuned, because what happens next will leave you speechless. By the way, I have a quick plea. It won't cost you anything, but it will help me reach my next big milestone. And it's as simple as hitting that subscribe button right now. It's free, and by subscribing, you're supporting the channel and ensuring you never miss any of our incredible stories. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear from you. Who knows? We might even be in the same city. Yeah, let's grow this community together. Now, let's begin. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. Every eye was fixed on Judge Prescott, a man known for his iron-fisted control over his domain. His voice boomed like thunder, cutting through the stillness. "Miss Bondi," he said, his tone sharp enough to slice through steel, "remove that Bible from my courtroom, or I'll hold you in contempt." Pam Bondi didn't flinch. She stood tall, her eyes locked on the judge. The Bible sat on the defense table, its presence as calm as she was. "Your Honor," she replied, her voice steady, "this Bible is a part of who I am. Removing it would violate my rights." The judge's face turned red. The tension in the room was so thick you could almost touch it. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. But Pam wasn't backing down. What she said next would change everything. Pam Bondi wasn't just any attorney. She was a powerhouse in the legal world, known for taking on impossible cases and winning. Her reputation was built on a foundation of intelligence, determination, and an unshakable belief in justice. That morning, she walked into the Tampa courthouse with her head held high. The courtroom was packed, but Pam didn't notice. She was focused on one thing: defending her client, a small business owner caught in a legal battle with a corporate giant. As she placed her briefcase on the defense table, she set her Bible down beside it. It was a simple black leather Bible, worn from years of use. To Pam, it was more than a book. It was a source of strength, a reminder of her values. Judge Prescott noticed it immediately. "Miss Bondi," he said, his voice cold, "this is a court of law, not a church. Remove that Bible, or I'll have no choice but to hold you in contempt." The room froze. Spectators exchanged nervous glances. Even the bailiff shifted uncomfortably. Pam didn't move. She looked the judge straight in the eye. "Your Honor," she said calmly, "this Bible is no different than a wedding ring or a locket with a family photo. It's a personal item, protected under the First Amendment." The judge's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being challenged. "Your rights end where my courtroom begins," he snapped. "Remove it or face the consequences." Pam's mind raced. She knew this wasn't just about a Bible. It was about power, control, and the line between personal freedom and judicial authority. But she also knew one thing: she wasn't backing down. The tension in the courtroom was electric. Pam could feel every pair of eyes on her, waiting to see what she would do next. She took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. "Your Honor," she began, her voice calm but firm, "before you issue any ruling, I'd like to address this matter formally." Judge Prescott raised an eyebrow. "Miss Bondi, this hearing is about a business dispute, not your personal grievances." Pam didn't flinch. "With all due respect, Your Honor, the First Amendment doesn't take a recess for personal opinions. I'd like to state my argument on the record." The judge leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping impatiently on the armrest. "You have 2 minutes." Pam didn't waste a second. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The room was so quiet you could hear the rustle of the paper as she placed it on the table. "Your Honor," she said, "you're fining me for wearing a cross and bringing a Bible into your courtroom. Let's break that down legally, shall we?" She began quoting case law, her voice steady and confident. "Tinker v. Des Moines, 1969. The Supreme Court ruled that individuals do not shed their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse gate or the courthouse door. West Virginia State Board of Education v. Barnett, 1943, the court ruled that compelling individuals to remove or hide symbols of personal belief is a violation of their First Amendment rights. The judge's face darkened. He opened his mouth to interrupt, but Pam didn't stop. "Your Honor, you allow attorneys to wear wedding rings, lapel pins, and even pink ribbons for breast cancer awareness in this courtroom. Why is my Bible any different?" The room erupted in murmurs. Spectators whispered to each other, some nodding in agreement, others shaking their heads. Judge Prescott slammed his gavel. "Order! Order! In the court." When the room quieted, he glared at Pam. "Miss Bondi, this is not a religious debate. It's about maintaining neutrality in my courtroom." Pam tilted her head. "Then why did you make it one, Your Honor?" The judge's face turned red. He leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Enough. I've heard enough. Remove the Bible, or I'll hold you in contempt." Pam didn't move. She folded her hands over her briefcase and looked the judge straight in the eye. "Your Honor," she said, her voice steady, "I'll stop when I receive a legal justification for this fine. So far, I haven't heard one." The room held its breath. The judge's jaw tightened. He was cornered and he knew it. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "Clerk, mark the fine as pending review." Pam allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was a start. The judge's words hung in the air like a storm cloud. "The fine is pending review," he repeated, his voice tight. Pam nodded, but she knew this wasn't over. Judge Prescott wasn't the type to back down easily. She could see it in his eyes, the way they narrowed, the way his fingers gripped the edge of his desk. He was angry, and he wasn't going to let this go. The hearing continued, but the mood in the courtroom had shifted. Everyone could feel it. The tension was no longer just about the case at hand. It was about the battle that had just unfolded, and the one that was still to come. When the hearing ended, Pam gathered her things and walked out of the courtroom. Her client, a middle-aged business owner, followed close behind. "That was incredible," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "I've never seen anything like it." Pam smiled, but her mind was already elsewhere. She knew Judge Prescott wouldn't let this slide. He was a man who valued control, and she had just challenged him in front of everyone. As she stepped out of the courthouse, the sunlight hit her face. It was a beautiful day, but Pam didn't notice. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a notification from a local news outlet. "Florida, judge attempts to fine attorney for wearing a cross. Backfires spectacularly." The headline read. Pam's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected the media to pick up the story so quickly. She scrolled through the article, her eyes widening as she read. The story had already gone viral. Comments flooded in, some praising her courage, others criticizing the judge. Social media was ablaze with debates about religious freedom, judicial overreach, and the right to personal expression. Pam's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from a colleague. "Did you see the news? You're everywhere." Pam took a deep breath. She hadn't planned for this, but she knew it was an opportunity. If the media was on her side, she could use it to her advantage. But before she could think too much about it, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from the Florida Bar Association. Pam's stomach dropped as she opened it. "Dear Miss Bondi," the email began, "we have received a formal complaint regarding your conduct in the courtroom today. Please respond within 10 days. Pam's heart raced. She knew exactly who had filed the complaint. Judge Prescott wasn't done with her, not by a long shot. Pam sat in her office staring at the email from the Florida Bar Association. The words seemed to jump off the screen. Asterisk formal complaint, conduct in the courtroom, respond within 10 days. She leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Judge Prescott had struck back, and he'd done it quickly. The complaint accused her of disrupting courtroom proceedings, challenging judicial authority, and engaging in behavior unbecoming of an attorney. Pam let out a short, humorless laugh. "Unbecoming," she muttered. "That's rich." Her assistant, Lauren, walked in, holding a tablet. "You've got to see this," she said, her voice tense. Pam took the tablet and scanned the screen. The Florida Bar Association had issued a public statement. "Judges have the right to maintain decorum in their courtrooms," it read. "While attorneys are afforded personal expression, it is important to respect the roles set forth by presiding judges. We trust our judicial system to navigate these matters with fairness and integrity." Pam set the tablet down. "This isn't just a statement," she said. "It's a warning." Lauren nodded. "Prescott's trying to turn this into a disciplinary issue. He wants to make you look like the problem." Pam's jaw tightened. She knew how this worked. Judges had power, and they didn't like it when someone challenged that power. Prescott was trying to flip the narrative, painting himself as the victim and her as the reckless attorney who had disrupted his courtroom. But Pam wasn't about to let that happen. "What's the process on this?" she asked. Already shifting gears, Lauren exhaled. "You'll have to respond within 10 days. If the complaint moves forward, they could conduct a formal review." Pam nodded slowly. "And who oversees that review?" Lauren hesitated. "A panel. It includes judges and senior attorneys." Pam almost smiled. If Prescott thought he could bury her in paperwork and quiet pressure, he had miscalculated. This wasn't going to be handled behind closed doors. "Lauren," she said, her voice firm, "draft a public statement. I want to make my position clear before Prescott and his allies try to muddy the waters." Lauren nodded. "You want to frame this as judicial overreach?" Pam shook her head. "I want to frame it as exactly what it is, an attack on personal rights and an abuse of judicial power. If this judge thinks he can punish me for standing up for myself, imagine what he's done to people who don't have a platform." Lauren's expression hardened. "I'll get it done." As Lauren left the room, Pam picked up her phone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for. Lisa Reynolds, a veteran journalist from a national legal affairs program. Lisa answered on the second ring. "Pam, I was just about to call you." Pam got straight to the point. "Lisa, I need you to listen carefully. A judge just filed a formal complaint against me for disrupting courtroom proceedings. But what really happened is, he tried to fine me for wearing a cross and bringing a Bible into court. When I stood my ground, he backed down. Now he's using the system to punish me instead."
Lisa was silent for a moment.
Then she let out a sharp breath. "You're telling me a sitting judge is trying to sanction you because you called out his abuse of power?" Pam smiled. "That's exactly what I'm telling you." Lisa didn't hesitate. "I'm running this. I'll have a segment up by tomorrow and I'll make sure legal analysts weigh in. This is going to blow up Pam." Pam hung up, feeling the first stirrings of momentum shifting in her favor. But she knew this wasn't over, not even close. The next morning, Pam walked into her office to find her phone buzzing non-stop. News outlets had picked up Lisa Reynolds' segment overnight, and the story was everywhere. "Florida judge attempts to punish attorney for wearing a cross. Now he's under fire," the headline screamed. Social media was ablaze. Legal analysts, constitutional experts, and even ordinary citizens were weighing in. A prominent attorney from Georgetown went on live television to tear apart Judge Prescott's logic, calling it a blatant overreach with no legal standing. Pam sat at her desk, scrolling through the comments. People were furious. Many praised her courage, while others shared their own stories of facing similar injustices. Then came the statement Pam had been waiting for. The Florida Judicial Review Board announced that, due to the media attention, they would be reviewing Judge Prescott's conduct to determine whether his ruling had violated judicial ethics. Pam leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. This was no longer just about her. It was about every attorney, every defendant, every person who had ever stepped into a courtroom, wondering if their rights could be stripped away with the stroke of a judge's pen. Lauren walked in, holding up her phone. "You're going to want to see this." Pam took the phone and pressed play. It was Judge Prescott standing outside the courthouse, surrounded by reporters. "I have always upheld the integrity of this courtroom," he said, his voice stiff. "The actions taken were in the interest of maintaining neutrality. However, I respect the judicial review process and will cooperate fully." Pam almost laughed. neutrality. He was still trying to play that card. Lauren crossed her arms. He's trying to save face. Pam nodded. And failing. Because this isn't going away. The Judicial Review Board had a decision to make. If they ruled against Prescott, it wouldn't just be a professional embarrassment, it would set a precedent, one that protected people like Pam from ever facing this kind of retaliation again. But even if they didn't formally reprimand him, he had already lost where it mattered most: his reputation, his credibility, his authority. Pam took a slow sip of her coffee, then looked up at Lauren. "We won." Lauren smiled. "Oh, I know." Pam set her cup down. She hadn't just fought for herself. She had sent a message that would echo far beyond that courtroom. The fallout from the case didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, the story continued to spread. Pam became a symbol of resistance, a reminder that one person's courage could inspire change. Legal experts debated the case on national television. Law schools added it to their curriculum as an example of standing up for constitutional rights. And Pam, she became a sought-after speaker, traveling across the country to talk about the importance of challenging authority and protecting personal freedoms. Judge Prescott's career, on the other hand, never recovered. The Judicial Review Board's investigation uncovered a pattern of biased rulings and overreach. He was formally reprimanded and placed on probation. Within a year, he retired, his legacy forever tarnished by his attempt to silence Pam. But for Pam, this wasn't just about winning. It was about setting a precedent. She knew her fight had made a difference, not just for her, but for everyone who walked into a courtroom after her. One evening, as she sat in her office, Pam looked at the Bible on her desk. It was still there, just where she had left it. She ran her fingers over the worn leather, a small smile playing on her lips. She had stood her ground. She had fought for what she believed in, and in doing so, she had changed the game forever. As she turned off the light and walked out of her office, Pam knew one thing for sure: this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. And that's the story of how one attorney, one Bible, and one bold stand against injustice made history. If you believe in standing up for your rights, make sure your voice is heard. Like, comment, and subscribe for more real stories that matter.